The streets of Manila were alive with noise and color, but in the middle of all the chaos, a boy's voice rose above everything else. Miguel Santos, just 12 years old, stood barefoot on a cracked corner near the jeepney stop, his small hands clutching a cheap microphone connected to a tiny speaker. He sang Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love," with such emotion that people passing by couldn't help but stop. His voice was smooth but full of ache, carrying a maturity beyond his years. Some people smiled and dropped coins into his old tin can, others filmed him on their phones, whispering about the Filipino kid who sings like Elvis. Miguel didn't sing for fame. He sang because every note helped his mother sell a few more snacks and kept their spirits alive when food was scarce. His mother, Liza, watched from a few feet away, her eyes full of love and worry. She believed that her son's voice was a miracle, a gift that could change their lives if the right person ever heard it. One afternoon, while Miguel was performing under the hot sun, a tourist from California stopped to listen. The man's name was Mark, and he was mesmerized by the young boy's performance. He pulled out his phone and recorded Miguel's entire song. Afterward, he dropped a few pesos into the can and smiled. "Kid, the world needs to hear you," he said before walking away. Miguel didn't think much of it, but that night, the man uploaded the video to social media with the caption, "You won't believe this street kid's voice. Elvis would be proud." Within 24 hours, the video exploded online. Comments flooded in from all over the world. People called him the Filipino Elvis and begged to know who he was. News stations picked up the story, and Miguel's life changed overnight. By the next morning, reporters were crowding their small shack, cameras flashing as Miguel tried to hide behind his mother. He didn't understand why everyone suddenly cared about him. Offers started coming from local shows, and people promised to make him a star. But one email stood out from the rest. It came from a talent scout for America's Got Talent. They wanted Miguel to audition in Los Angeles. Liza was speechless. She had never left the Philippines and couldn't imagine taking her son to another country. They had no passports, no savings, and barely enough to eat. Miguel didn't want to give up, though. He prayed every night, whispering that he would make his father, who had passed away years ago, proud. Then something unbelievable happened. Fans who saw his video online began raising money for his trip. Within weeks, enough donations arrived for tickets and visas. When Miguel held his passport for the first time, he couldn't stop smiling. It was his ticket to a dream he never thought possible. The night before they left, Miguel sang one more time on the same corner where it all began. The crowd cheered, some crying, knowing they might never see him there again. As the plane took off from Manila, Miguel pressed his face to the window, staring at the clouds. He whispered a quiet promise to himself, to make his country proud. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, everything felt surreal. The air smelled different, the streets were bigger, and the lights seemed to touch the sky. He couldn't believe that the same boy who once sang for coins was now in America. At the hotel, he practiced late into the night, his voice echoing softly as his mother watched, her heart swelling with pride. The next day, Miguel walked onto the massive stage of America's Got Talent. The bright lights blinded him for a moment, and his knees shook as he looked out at the judges' table. Simon Cowell sat in the middle, his sharp eyes studying the small boy in front of him. Miguel took a deep breath, his fingers trembling as he held the microphone. The crowd waited in silence. He glanced at his mother standing off stage, her hands clasped in prayer. Then the music started, and Miguel began to sing. The first soft note of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the huge theater, and the crowd instantly fell silent. Miguel stood on the massive stage, clutching the microphone like it was his lifeline. His voice trembled at first, but as he closed his eyes, the fear slowly faded away. Each lyric flowed out of him with the warmth and honesty of someone who had known pain but chose to sing with love instead. His voice was pure, emotional, and deeply soulful, touching something in every person in the audience. The melody seemed to hang in the air, delicate and haunting. As he sang, Miguel imagined Elvis himself standing behind him, smiling and guiding his tone. The judges sat frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. Even Simon Cowell, known for his sharp critiques, leaned forward, completely captivated. When Miguel reached the final note, he poured his heart into it, holding it until the entire theater erupted into thunderous applause. For a moment, Miguel stood still, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. People were standing, clapping, and cheering his name. His mother sobbed backstage, her hands covering her face. Simon blinked several times, trying to compose himself, but a tear slipped down his cheek before he pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti burst into the air, swirling around Miguel like a dream come true. The crowd roared louder, and Miguel fell to his knees in disbelief, tears streaming down his face. Simon walked to the stage, something he rarely did, and hugged the boy. "That was one of the most beautiful performances I've ever heard," he said softly into the microphone. Miguel could barely speak. All he managed to say was, "Thank you, sir, thank you so much." Within hours, the video of Simon crying went viral across every social platform. People from all over the world were talking about the Filipino boy who made Simon Cowell emotional. Miguel's name became a global sensation overnight, and the press called him the boy who brought Elvis back to life. But fame brought a new kind of pressure. As the competition moved forward, Miguel was busier than he had ever been. Rehearsals, interviews, and media appearances filled every moment of his day. He smiled for the cameras, but deep inside, he missed home. He missed the smell of Manila's streets, his mother's cooking, and the simple joy of singing freely without fear of failure. Some nights he sat by the hotel window, staring at the city lights, wondering if he still sang for love or if it had turned into something he had to do. During one rehearsal, his voice cracked badly, and the music director frowned. Miguel's confidence began to crumble. He worried he was losing his voice, that maybe he wasn't meant for this kind of life. His mother tried to comfort him, reminding him that his gift came from the heart, not from perfection. Still, the fear stayed. One evening, as Miguel sat alone backstage before another rehearsal, he heard a familiar voice behind him. It was Simon Cowell. The usually intimidating judge sat beside him quietly. "You know," Simon said, "I've worked with thousands of singers. But very few make me feel something real. You did that. Don't let fear take that away from you." Miguel listened carefully, his eyes wide. Simon continued, "You don't have to sound perfect. You just have to mean every word you sing. That's what people remember." Those words stayed with Miguel. He realized that he didn't need to prove anything, he just needed to sing the way he always had, from his soul. That night, Miguel stood before the mirror in his dressing room, staring at his reflection. He looked different now, older, more confident, but still that same boy who once sang for coins. He smiled softly and whispered, "For you, Mom, for Elvis." As he walked toward the stage for his next performance, his heart was calm. He wasn't scared anymore. He was ready to sing again, not for fame or judges, but for the love that started it all. The finale night arrived with a mix of nerves and excitement. The studio was brighter than ever, packed with thousands of cheering fans waving flags from around the world. Miguel stood backstage, dressed in a stunning white Elvis-inspired suit with shining rhinestones and a small Filipino flag sewn on the sleeve by his mother. The lights flickered across his face, and he could hear his heartbeat pounding in his chest. He whispered a quiet prayer, clutching the small cross necklace his mother had given him. This was his moment, the night that would define everything he had worked for. When the stage manager gave the signal, Miguel stepped forward, his feet trembling as the crowd erupted in applause. He took his place in the center of the stage as the soft introduction of "If I Can Dream" began to play. From the first lyric, his voice was full of power and hope. Every word carried the emotion of his journey, from the poverty of Manila's streets to the bright lights of Los Angeles. The audience was completely silent, captivated by the raw beauty of his voice. Miguel wasn't just singing, he was telling his story through every note. His mother stood in the wings, tears rolling down her cheeks as she watched her son transform from a shy street singer into a global star. Halfway through the song, Miguel raised his hand toward the audience, his voice soaring higher, echoing across the theater. The camera panned across the judges' table. Heidi was crying, Howie had goosebumps, and Simon sat completely still, eyes glistening with emotion. When the final line came, "While I can dream, please let my dream come true," Miguel held the note until the entire arena exploded with cheers and applause. People were on their feet, chanting his name. Confetti rained from above as his mother ran onto the stage to hug him tightly. Simon Cowell stood and applauded, smiling proudly. "You didn't just sing tonight," Simon said into the microphone, you reminded us what it means to believe in something." Miguel wiped his tears, overwhelmed by the love pouring from the audience. Later, when the results were announced, Miguel didn't win first place, but it didn't matter. He had already won the hearts of millions around the world. Record labels contacted his team immediately, and fans flooded social media, calling him the voice of hope. His story became front-page news in the Philippines. The boy who once sang for coins had now sung for the world. When Miguel returned home weeks later, the Manila airport was overflowing with people waiting to welcome him. Reporters crowded the arrival gate, fans held signs that said, "Welcome home, Miguel." And children waved miniature flags. As soon as he appeared, the crowd broke into cheers. His mother held his hand tightly as they made their way through the sea of people. For Miguel, the noise, the laughter, and the warm humidity of home felt more beautiful than any stage he had stood on. Instead of heading straight home, he asked to visit the same street corner where it all began. The vendors were still there, the same jeepneys honking in the background. He took out his old microphone and began to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love," once more. People stopped again, just like before, but this time they weren't strangers, they were his neighbors, his friends, his people. Children sat on the curb, listening with wide eyes, and even the busy drivers slowed down to watch. When he finished, the crowd clapped and cheered, chanting his name. Miguel smiled, his heart full. He turned to his mother and said softly, "We did it, Mama." In the weeks that followed, Miguel used part of his earnings to start a small music foundation for poor children who dreamed of singing too. He wanted to give them instruments, lessons, and hope. He often told them, "Dream big, even if your stage is just the street. Someone will hear you." As the sun set over Manila one evening, Miguel stood on a rooftop, looking out over the glowing city lights. He thought about everything, the fear, the tears, the applause, and Simon's golden buzzer moment. He realized that success wasn't just about winning, it was about touching hearts. With a gentle smile, he whispered the words that started it all, "Wise men say, only fools rush in." His voice faded into the night, a reminder that from the humblest streets of Manila, a single voice had reached the whole world.